Saturday mornings used to be my safe space. No alarm clocks, no obligations, just a quiet ritual. Fresh coffee, sunlight sneaking past the blinds, the city still half asleep. That morning, though, the world decided to rip the rug out from under me. My name is Robin. I'm 32, single, and if I'm being honest, I've always been the responsible one in my family. Not because I wanted to be, but because someone had to. My parents are in their late 50s, still sharp-tongued and controlling. And then there's Kayla, my younger sister, 6 years my junior. She's the golden child, the favorite, the one who always seems to be shielded from consequences. Married just 6 months ago, and now pregnant. If you asked my parents, she's a miracle walking among us. If you asked me, well, she's my sister. Complicated. But there was one thing that was mine, truly mine. A modest country house up in the mountains. I bought it 3 years ago, after grinding through work, saving every spare cent. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a little porch, pine trees crowding the view. But it was freedom, my escape. Every time I drove up, it was like shedding a skin, leaving behind the guilt trips and the endless requests for help. I didn't get to visit as often as I wanted, but knowing it existed kept me sane. I had just sat down with my coffee when the phone rang. Too early for a Saturday. I frowned when I saw the caller ID. Mike, my realtor. He was the one who'd found me that mountain place, the only real estate guy I ever trusted. "Morning, Robin," he said, though he didn't sound like it was much of one. "Quick question. You selling your mountain house?" I nearly choked on the coffee. "What? No. Why?" "That's odd," Mike muttered, "because I just saw it listed online. Pictures, description, everything. Thought maybe you forgot to loop me in, but we had that agreement, right?" My stomach dropped. "Send me the link. Right now." "On it. And, just so you know, I've already got a buyer sniffing around. Guy's been hunting for a place like yours forever. He called me as soon as he saw the ad." I ended the call with shaky fingers. When the text came through, I clicked the link and felt the ground tilt under me. There it was. My house. My sanctuary. Photos I had never taken, but unmistakably of my home. The listing described it perfectly, every window, every feature, like someone who'd lived there. But what made my blood run cold was the contact number. It wasn't mine, it was my mother's. My hands started to tremble. For a moment, I thought maybe it was some mistake. Maybe she was just testing something or trying to help. But deep down, I knew better. I hit dial. She answered on the second ring, syrupy sweet. "Hi, honey." "Mom," I said, my voice sharp. "What the hell is this ad about my house?" There was a pause. Then her tone shifted into that calm, patronizing voice she used whenever she knew she was caught. "Oh, so you saw it? Well, yes, we posted it." I stood up so fast my chair screeched across the floor. "You what? That's my house, Mom. You can't just—" "Robin," she interrupted, "don't make this harder than it has to be. Kayla needs her own place. She's pregnant now, and she and Brian can't possibly raise a baby in that tiny apartment. This is the perfect solution. We're just thinking ahead for everyone's good." I could hear Dad in the background before he snatched the phone. "Your mother's right. Family comes first, Robin. Always has. Always will." His voice was heavy, rehearsed. "Remember Kayla's wedding? We asked you for 100,000, and you only gave us 10. A good sister would have stepped up. Now you have a chance to finally do right." My pulse hammered. That was all I could afford, and this isn't helping. This is stealing. "Don't be dramatic," Mom chimed in again. "We're family. We've taken care of you your whole life. You hardly even use that mountain house. We're there more than you are." "That doesn't matter," I snapped. "It's still mine. You can't just decide to sell it without me. Legally, you need my signature." "Oh, sweetie," Mom interrupted, and then she did something that made me feel physically sick. She laughed. A soft, smug laugh. "We've got that covered. We've been handling your paperwork for years, remember? We have copies of your ID, plenty of examples of your signature. This won't be a problem at all." Dad's voice cut in like a hammer. "We've been planning this for months, Robin. Don't fight it. Just accept it. It's for the family." Something inside me cracked. I hung up. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the blank wall. Their voices replayed in my head. Mom's laugh, Dad's calm certainty. They weren't just manipulating me this time. They were prepared. They were ready to commit fraud against me. their own daughter, and they thought I'd roll over like always. I pressed my palms into my eyes until I saw stars. My chest was heaving, but beneath the panic, something else stirred. Anger. A hot, burning anger that spread like fire through my veins. All my life, I'd been the fallback. Need money for Kayla's tuition? Robin will help. Can't pay the mortgage? Robin will cover it. Wedding expenses? Robin again. I thought that's what daughters were supposed to do, sacrifice. But this wasn't sacrifice. This was robbery, wrapped in family guilt. They thought I'd never fight back. They thought I'd cry, maybe plead, but in the end, I'd give in. Not this time. I gripped the phone, heart pounding, and whispered to myself, if this is a race, then I'm going to win. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of that phone call. My mother's laughter cut deepest. It wasn't just cruel, it was confident, like she had me cornered. And maybe she thought she did. I kept drifting back to memories I'd buried for years. Little moments that, strung together, made a pattern I had been too blind or too loyal to see. I was 18 when it started. Dad had a minor surgery, nothing life-threatening, but enough to scare them. I remember Mom sitting at the kitchen table, a neat stack of bills in front of her, tears welling up. Sweetheart, could you just sign a few checks for us? You're better with money than we are. You'll take care of us, won't you? Back then, I thought it was love. I thought it meant trust. I didn't see it for what it really was, the first link in a chain. From then on, every crisis somehow had my name attached. A flat tire? Robin will pay. Kayla needs a dress for prom? Robin will buy it. When Kayla got engaged, Mom and Dad called me one night as if they were announcing a state emergency. We need $100,000 for the wedding. Your sister deserves the best. I had scraped together 10, already more than I could afford, and handed it over with a smile. I remember Dad's look afterward, not gratitude, but disappointment, like I had failed a test. And now here we were, years later, same test. This time the price was my house. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text. Kayla. Kayla. Hey, I know you're upset, but please don't make this harder. The house is perfect. We already talked about turning the smaller bedroom into the nursery. It's fate, Robin. Please just help us out. I'll owe you forever. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Owe me forever. I almost laughed. I'd heard that before, too many times. And yet, there was a pang in my chest. A nursery. A niece or nephew I hadn't met yet. For a second, I wondered if maybe I was the selfish one. If maybe my house was less important than a child's future. But then I remembered my mother's voice, low and smug. We've got that covered. We've been handling your paperwork for years. The guilt burned away, leaving only fury. By morning, I had made up my mind. If they wanted a race, I'd make sure they lost. I dialed Mike before the sun was even up. How fast can we sell? Sell? I thought you said... I changed my mind. How fast? He hesitated. Depends on the buyer. The guy I mentioned yesterday, he's serious. He's got cash ready. But Robin, selling this quickly, it's going to feel rushed. Good. The faster the better. If he's really ready, I'll knock 10 grand off the asking price, and I'll give you a speed bonus on your commission. But it has to close before my parents pull something illegal. Mike went quiet for a long moment. All right, I'll call him, but you better get your paperwork together today. When I hung up, adrenaline surged through me. For the first time in years, I was moving first instead of reacting. I went straight to my computer and logged into my bank accounts. Years ago, when Dad had that surgery, I gave my parents access to my finances, just in case. I had told myself it was practical, that it made things easier. In reality, it had made me vulnerable. Click by click, I shut them out. Revoked every shared access. Reset every password. The sense of relief was immediate, like locking a door I didn't know had been open all this time. Then I did something I'd only ever fantasized about. I canceled the automatic payment I'd been making on their mortgage. For 2 years, I had been paying $800 a month for their house, because they couldn't. Because they convinced me it was my responsibility. Not anymore, I whispered to the glowing screen. By noon, Mike called back. He's in. The buyer. A sheriff, actually. Steady guy. No nonsense. He's wanted a mountain property for years. If you can have everything ready, we could close by Thursday. Thursday, 4 days. My heart raced. It was possible. It was real. That evening, Mom called again. I didn't pick up. Dad left a voicemail, his voice low and heavy, rehearsed like a sermon. Robin, think carefully. Family is everything. You can't run from blood. If you fight us on this, you'll regret it. I replayed it once, then deleted it. But I couldn't shake his words, not because they scared me, but because a small part of me still wanted them to mean something else. I wanted family is everything to sound like love, not a threat. I looked around my apartment, piles of unopened mail, the hum of the refrigerator, the city sounds outside. My life had been small for so long, tethered by invisible strings tied to my parents' demands. For the first time, I imagined what it might be like without those strings. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. Later that night, Kayla texted again. Kayla, I don't understand why you're being so cruel. I thought you loved me. I'm your sister. This baby is going to need you. If you cared at all, you'd do this for me. I didn't reply. My hand hovered over the keyboard, but no words came. How do you explain to someone that love has been twisted into currency? That you've been paying the price for years, and you're finally broke, not of money, but of patience? Instead, I turned my phone off and let the silence swallow me. When I finally crawled into bed, the decision was made. The papers would be signed, the house sold, the money mine, and my parents, my whole family, would learn that I wasn't their endless supply anymore. I closed my eyes, clutching the sheets, whispering the words I'd never dared say aloud. They take and take, but this time I'm taking back. The next 4 days blurred into a haze of phone calls, paperwork, and hurried signatures. Mike was relentless. Thank God. He moved like a man on a mission, emailing contracts at midnight, calling city offices first thing in the morning, pushing inspectors to do me a personal favor. Without him, none of this would have been possible. I drove across town twice to drop off notarized documents. Each time I felt like a criminal, sneaking glances over my shoulder, terrified I'd see my parents' car trailing me. Every traffic light felt like an interrogation. Every glance from a stranger like suspicion. And through it all, guilt gnawed at me. I kept thinking about Kayla, about her message. This baby is going to need you. I imagined her standing in some baby store, hand on her belly, trying to picture a future that was already falling apart. A crib, a nursery, little clothes folded neatly into drawers. I wasn't heartless. I wanted to be an aunt. I wanted to love that child, but not like this. Not through blackmail and theft. One evening, after signing a stack of forms, I sat at my desk, staring at my reflection in the dark window. Maybe I'm the villain, I whispered to the glass. Maybe they're right. Maybe family is everything, and I'm breaking it. But then the memory returned. My mother's laugh. That smug, cruel little laugh when she told me they'd already prepared my forged signature. The guilt dissolved into rage again. Late that night, Kayla texted me. This time it wasn't pleading. Kayla, I've already been talking to designers about the nursery. Mom said the money would come through in time. Don't screw this up, Robin. I know you get jealous sometimes, but this isn't about you. It's about family. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. Jealous? That's what she thought? That I was jealous of her? I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I wrote, Me, the house isn't yours. It never was. Then I set the phone face down and refused to look at it again. The next morning, Mike called with a voice full of energy. Robin, I've got good news. The sheriff, his name's Daniel, he's ready to close. Thursday afternoon, all cash. He's even waiving some contingencies to make it faster. This is as good as it gets. I exhaled shakily, the tension in my chest loosening just a little. Thursday. That soon? That soon, Mike confirmed. If you sign this last round of paperwork tonight, it'll be official. Official. The word felt like a lifeline. I signed. And when I set down the pen, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. For years, every time I'd written a check for my parents or wired money into Kayla's account, I'd felt a tremor in my hands, as if my body knew before my mind did that I was being drained, piece by piece. But this time, the steadiness of my signature felt like a declaration, mine. The sale finalized Thursday at 3:15 p.m. By 4:00, the money was in my account. The numbers on the screen glowed like salvation, enough to pay off my own mortgage, enough to breathe for the first time in years. But I didn't feel victory, not yet, because I knew the real battle hadn't even started. I kept the sale a secret, didn't tell my parents, didn't tell Kayla. I wanted them to discover it the hard way. I wanted the shock to land like a stone thrown through glass. Friday morning, I got an email confirmation. Transfer complete, deed recorded. The house was no longer mine. It belonged to Sheriff Daniel Collins. And yet, I couldn't shake the image of my parents sitting at their kitchen table, smugly planning out which bank to use for Kayla's apartment fund, certain they had me cornered. They didn't know they were already standing on thin ice. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through my phone. Photos from weekends at the mountain house, the porch at sunrise, the fire pit glowing at night, the little trail I used to walk when I needed to clear my head. For a moment, my chest ached. Had I betrayed myself by letting it go? Had I let them win by forcing me to sell something I loved? But then I remembered the sheriff's face when Mike introduced us at closing. A calm, steady man with a firm handshake. He told me he'd been dreaming of a quiet home in the mountains for years, a place to raise his kids away from chaos. At least the house would be loved. That mattered, maybe more than I wanted to admit. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Kayla. Kayla. Mom says you're being weird. She tried to check on the house and couldn't get in. Did you change the locks? Please tell me this is just a joke. I already picked out paint colors. I didn't reply. The silence felt like power. But as I set the phone down, unease crept in. Because I knew silence could only hold them back for so long. They'd find out soon enough, and when they did, there would be no going back. It didn't take long for the silence to shatter. Tuesday morning, my phone lit up before I'd even finished brushing my teeth. Mom, Dad, Kayla, calls stacking on top of each other until my screen looked like a flashing alarm. I let it ring, again and again. By the fourth round, I picked up. Robin! Mom's voice was high, panicked. What is going on? I went to the mountain house with some buyers yesterday and there were new locks on the doors. Did you change them? I wiped my wet hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. No, I didn't change the locks. Then who did? Her tone sharpened, suspicion laced with hysteria. The new owners, I said calmly, because I sold the house. Silence. A long, aching silence. Then came her laugh, shaky, hysterical, the laugh of someone clinging to denial. That's very funny, Robin. But seriously, what's going on? These buyers are expecting a showing. You're making this harder than it has to be. I'm not joking, I said flatly. I sold the house last week. It belongs to someone else now. Her laugh broke into sobs. You didn't. You wouldn't. I did. And if you have questions about the locks, take it up with the sheriff. He lives there now. The sobbing stopped. I could hear her breathing, short and ragged, before the line clicked dead. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. My face looked different somehow. Harder, sharper. The phone rang again, this time Kayla. I almost ignored it, but curiosity tugged at me. I answered. Robin, what the hell did you do? Her voice was shrill, panicky. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. She said you sold the house? Tell me she's lying. She's not lying, I said. The house is gone. Sold. Done. No, you can't do that. We've been planning this for months. I already picked out an apartment. I've been looking at furniture, Robin. I even hired a designer to plan the nursery. You can't just ruin everything now. I almost laughed. The sheer entitlement was staggering. Kayla, it was never yours to begin with. But we need that money. Her voice cracked into a desperate wail. I'm pregnant, Robin. Pregnant. Do you even understand what that means? This baby deserves a home, not some shoebox apartment. How could you be so heartless? Something in me hardened. Then maybe you and Brian should get jobs that actually pay enough to support a family. Her gasp cut through the line. You're cruel. You don't mean that. Oh, I mean every word, I said, my voice low, steady. You all think I exist to fix your lives, but I'm done. Figure out your own. Please, just give Mom the keys to the new locks, she begged, her tone whiplashing from anger to pleading. We can still show the house, sell it properly, and... There are no keys to give you, Kayla. I don't own it anymore. That chapter is closed. The house belongs to someone else now. There was a pause. Then Kayla's voice rose, shaking with fury. You've destroyed this family, Robin. Do you hear me? Destroyed it. I let the silence hang for a beat before hanging up. For the first time in years, I didn't cry after one of these fights. No shaking hands, no guilt settling heavy in my chest. Instead, I felt steady, almost cold. Still that night, lying awake in the dark, I couldn't ignore the faint echo of her words. Destroyed this family. Maybe she was right. Maybe what I'd done wasn't just drawing a line, it was striking a match. I turned on my lamp and sat up, staring at the wall. Was I cruel? Had I finally become what they'd always accused me of being? Selfish, ungrateful, cold? Full. But then I remembered Mom's smug laughter, Dad's threats, Kayla's endless demands, and the guilt slid off me like water. I wasn't the one who destroyed this family. They had. I was just the one who finally stopped pretending otherwise. The next morning, the calls stopped. No messages, no texts, just silence. The kind of silence that made me uneasy, like the stillness before a storm. I tried to work, but my thoughts drifted back to the mountain house, to its porch and its quiet. For years, it had been my retreat from the chaos of my family. And now, even though it wasn't mine anymore, it was still doing its job, shielding me, keeping them out. But I knew the storm wasn't over. My parents weren't the type to accept defeat quietly. And I was right. The quiet didn't last long. By Friday, Mike's name lit up my phone. I almost ignored it, assuming it was some follow-up about paperwork, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Robin," he said, his tone unusually heavy, "we've got a problem." I froze. What kind of problem? "It's about the mountain house. Sheriff Collins called me this morning. Someone tried to break in last night." My grip tightened on the phone. "What? Was anything stolen?" "No," Mike said carefully. "The alarm went off before they could get in, but it's all on camera." I swallowed hard. "Did they catch who it was?" There was a pause. "Yeah, they did. Robin. It was your father." The world tilted. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. "My dad?" "Caught red-handed," Mike said quietly. "Sheriff didn't press full charges. He's being pretty understanding because it's family. But legally speaking, your dad attempted to break into a law enforcement officer's home. It's not a good look." I sat down on the edge of my bed, gripping the sheets to steady myself. My father. My own father. Even after I'd told them it was sold, even after Mom had seen the new locks, he still drove up there in the dead of night and tried to force his way in. Mike sighed on the other end. "Robin, I just wanted you to know before this gets messier. Sheriff Collins is keeping things calm for now, but the police report exists, and your dad was aggressive during the arrest. There's talk of disorderly conduct." "Thank you, Mike," I whispered. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. We hung up, and almost immediately my phone rang again. "Dad," I answered with my heart pounding in my throat. "Robin!" His voice was frantic, ragged. "You need to fix this. Call the police. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" My voice cracked. "You broke into someone else's home." "That wasn't someone else's home," he barked. "That was your house. Our house. I've always had access. Tell them that. Tell them I was just trying to get into my daughter's property." I closed my eyes, tears burning behind them. "Dad, I told you, I sold it. Why didn't you listen?" "We didn't think you were serious," he snapped. "We thought you were just mad. Changing the locks to scare us. You can't do this to your own family, Robin. Not now. Not with your sister pregnant." The guilt struck again, sharp as a blade, but underneath it was something stronger, something hot and furious. "No, Dad," I said, my voice low, shaking with restrained anger. "You did this to yourself." There was a beat of silence, then his voice rose into a roar. "Selfish girl! Ungrateful! After everything we've done for you." I hung up. For a long time, I just sat there, clutching the phone, listening to the silence. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time, from heartbreak. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I flipped through channels on the TV until I landed on the local news. And there it was. "Local man arrested for attempted break-in," the anchor reported, her tone brisk and detached. They didn't name him, but the details were unmistakable. Middle-aged male, detained at a mountain residence recently purchased by Sheriff Daniel Collins. The screen showed flashing lights, police cars parked outside a house I knew too well. My house. No, his house now. The reporter continued. "The suspect became verbally aggressive with officers during the arrest and has been charged with attempted illegal entry and disorderly conduct. He could face up to 6 months in jail." My father, facing jail time. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark. Memories flooded me. Him teaching me to ride a bike, holding my hand too tight as I wobbled. His voice cheering when I finally balanced. Him sitting in the stands at my high school graduation, clapping louder than anyone. And now, him in handcuffs, cursing at officers while the cameras rolled. Was this the same man, or had he been gone all along, replaced by someone who saw me as a bank account, not a daughter? The next morning, the calls resumed. Mom, Kayla. Then Dad again, his voice hoarse, desperate. "Robin, you have to help me," he pleaded. "I could lose everything. My job, my reputation. The sheriff will listen to you. Tell him I was confused, that I thought I still had rights to the place." I pressed the phone to my ear, feeling a storm rage inside me. Part of me wanted to cave, to protect him, to salvage the pieces of family that were left. But another part, the louder part, remembered Mom's smug laugh, Kayla's entitled texts, Dad's threats. "I can't," I whispered. "You won't," he snapped, fury replacing desperation. "You'd rather watch your own father rot in jail than lift a finger to help. You're heartless." Something inside me went cold. Maybe. Or maybe I've just learned who you really are. His voice broke into curses, harsh and ugly, until I hung up again. For the rest of the day, I walked through my apartment in a daze. Every surface felt unfamiliar, every sound too sharp. My own reflection startled me, eyes red, cheeks hollow. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The loyal daughter who used to sign checks without complaint, or this new version of myself who could hang up on her father's cries for help. But as the sun sank outside, painting the walls in fading orange, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The family I thought I had was gone, and in its place was something darker, hungrier. A family that would rather break laws, break into homes, than admit they couldn't control me anymore. The morning after Dad's arrest, my phone rang before I was even out of bed. Mom. I let it buzz, then buzz again. By the fifth call, I answered, not because I wanted to, but because I knew she wouldn't stop. Her voice was already breaking. "Robin, please, you have to help us. Your father, he needs a lawyer. They're saying he could go to jail. We don't have the money for this. You know that. You need to step up." I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "Mom, he broke into someone else's house. That's not my responsibility." "You sold it!" she shrieked, her grief boiling over into accusation. "If you hadn't sold the house, none of this would have happened. This is your fault. You've destroyed this family." I pressed my palm to my forehead. "My fault? You forged my name. You planned to steal from me. I protected what was mine." "We're family," she sobbed. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't abandon each other. Kayla is pregnant. Your father could go to prison, and you're sitting there acting like some stranger." Her words cut deep, but there was venom underneath the tears. Every sentence dripped with blame, not remorse. Not once did she admit they'd done wrong. "You've robbed us of our future," she wailed. "Kayla can't buy the apartment now. We can't make our mortgage because you stopped helping. Your father might end up behind bars." I felt laughter bubbling up, not from joy, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. "I robbed you? You were literally planning to forge my signature and steal my house, and somehow I'm the villain?" "Ungrateful," she hissed, "after everything we've done for you." My grip on the phone tightened. "What have you done for me, Mom? Besides expect me to pay for everything? Besides treat me like a bank account you can bleed dry?" She didn't answer. Just more sobs, repeating the word selfish over and over until I couldn't bear it anymore. "Don't call me again," I said, my voice shaking with finality, and I hung up. The phone buzzed again instantly. This time it was Kayla. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Her tone was icy. "I hope you're happy. Mom's in tears, Dad's humiliated, and I'm stuck in this nightmare because you couldn't just be decent." I swallowed hard. "Kayla, you were part of this. You knew what they were doing. You went along with it." "I was planning for my baby's future," she snapped. "What were you planning for, Robin? To ruin all of ours?" I felt my chest tighten. "Your future isn't mine to pay for. It never was." "You're cruel," she spat. "Cold. No wonder you don't have anyone. No husband, no kids, just a house you barely used. Maybe this is why. Because you push people away until there's nothing left." The words stung because in some dark place they felt true. I had no partner, no child, no family I could count on. Just walls and work and a mountain house that was no longer mine. But then the sting hardened into something else. Resolve. "You're right," I said softly. "I don't have anyone. And maybe that's better than having people who only see me as a paycheck. I'd rather be alone than used." Kayla's breath hissed through the line. "You'll regret this. You've destroyed this family, Robin. Remember that when the baby's born and you're not allowed anywhere near her." And she hung up. I stared at the silent phone, my chest heaving. For years I had been terrified of those words. Destroyed this family. Terrified that without their approval, I'd be nothing. But now, for the first time, I realized the truth. This family had destroyed itself. I had only stopped playing along. That afternoon, I blocked them all. Mom, Dad, Kayla, every number, every thread of contact, gone. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating at first. My apartment felt cavernous, the hum of the fridge echoing like a taunt. But as the hours passed, that silence began to feel like something else. Peace. I sat at my kitchen table as the sun sank, watching the light fade into gold. My phone lay silent beside me. No buzzing, no pleading, no guilt-laden demands. Just quiet. I exhaled slowly, like I'd been holding my breath for years. Still, in the stillness, grief crept in. I wasn't naive. I knew what I'd lost. Parents, a sister, a niece I would probably never meet, holidays that would be empty now, birthdays celebrated alone. But maybe that was the price of freedom. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted no one. My hand trembled as I whispered into the empty room, I don't have a family anymore. The words hurt, but they also felt like truth. For the first time in my life, truth and freedom were the same thing. A month of silence passed. At first, it was eerie. No calls, no voicemails, no buzzing texts begging for money or dripping with guilt. For the first week, I kept checking my blocked list, half expecting my phone to find a way to betray me, to let their voices slip through. But it stayed quiet. The quiet turned into something else, routine. I woke up without dread. I paid my bills without wondering which emergency was going to drain me next. For the first time in years, my life belonged to me. And then Aunt Sarah called. She wasn't someone who usually involved herself in drama. My mom's younger sister, Sarah, had always been the calm one at family gatherings, the peacemaker who tried to smooth things over without taking sides. That's why I answered. Her voice was soft. Robin, honey, I just wanted to check in and to let you know what's been happening. I sat on my couch, clutching the phone like it might shatter. I don't need to know, Sarah. I think you should, she said gently. Not because you owe them anything, but because it's family and, well, you deserve to hear it from someone who isn't trying to manipulate you. I didn't respond, so she continued. Kayla and Brian moved in with your parents. They refinanced the house and put it in Kayla's name, so your parents wouldn't lose it. She and Brian are making the payments now. I blinked, stunned. For years, my parents had treated Kayla like porcelain, too fragile to handle real responsibility. And yet, in desperation, they'd handed her the deed to their home. I had to admit, I murmured, half to myself, that's actually smart. Sarah gave a sad laugh. Sneaky, too. She learned from the best, I suppose. I leaned back, pressing a hand to my forehead. Kayla, the golden child, now the one holding the title. It was almost poetic. And your dad, Sarah's voice softened further. He got 6 months probation. No jail time, but he had to pay a fine. He's checking in with a probation officer. But when his boss at the mall found out about the arrest, they let him go. He's unemployed now. My chest tightened. Dad without work wasn't just about money. It was about pride. His whole identity had been wrapped up in being the provider, the authority. To lose that, it was a punishment worse than jail. And the lawyer, Sarah continued, was expensive. They had to borrow from nearly everyone in the family. Then they drained their retirement savings to pay people back. They're basically broke now. I let out a slow breath. So this was the fallout. The empire they thought they controlled had crumbled in their hands. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not hostile. Sarah finally said, Robin, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I just thought you'd want to know. I hesitated. Do they hate me? Sarah sighed. They don't see it that way. They think you abandoned them. They think you chose money over family. I laughed bitterly. Of course they do. Sarah didn't argue. She never did. Instead, she asked, do you ever miss them? The question lodged in my chest like a splinter. I wanted to say no. I wanted to sound strong, detached, invincible. But the truth was messier. I miss what I thought we were, I admitted. I miss believing I had a family. But what I actually had? No, I don't miss that. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, Kayla had the baby. A little girl. She's beautiful. The ache hit me like a wave. My niece. Flesh and blood I'd never meet. The thought of her tiny fingers, her laugh, her first words, all moments I'd be absent for, was almost unbearable. Robin, Sarah said gently, you don't have to forgive them. But don't close the door forever. Sometimes people change. Sometimes babies change things. I closed my eyes, tears threatening. They stopped being my parents when they decided to steal from me, Sarah. And Kayla made her choice when she went along with it. Some doors can't be opened again. I could almost hear Sarah nodding on the other end. I understand. I just didn't want you to be blindsided if you hear things from someone else. We said our goodbyes, and I sat there long after the call ended, staring at nothing. In the silence, my emotions tangled. Satisfaction that justice had finally touched them. sadness that the word family now felt like a wound, guilt that my niece would grow up without an aunt. That night, I dreamed of the mountain house, not as it was when I owned it, but as if I were standing outside in the snow, watching from a distance. Through the windows, I saw a family sitting by the fire: Mom, Dad, Kayla, the baby. They were laughing, smiling, as if nothing had ever happened, and I was outside, in the cold, unable to come in. When I woke, the image clung to me. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I wasn't free at all. Maybe I just traded one kind of prison for another. Because freedom, I was learning, carried its own shadows. It feels strange to measure time this way, like my life split into two eras, before the mountain house and after. Before, I was the daughter who paid for everything, the sister who could be guilted into any sacrifice, the woman who existed not for herself but for the endless emergencies of others. After I became someone else entirely. I paid off my mortgage the day the sale money hit my account. That single act, logging in, clicking confirm, watching the debt disappear, was like dropping a boulder I didn't know I'd been carrying. For the first time since my 20s, I wasn't drowning in bills. With the weight lifted, I started saving. I even allowed myself a small luxury, trading in my beat-up Honda for a 2-year-old Toyota Camry. Reliable, nothing flashy, but when I drove it off the lot, I felt something I hadn't in years: choice. But the real luxury was silence. No more midnight calls about emergencies. No more manipulative voicemails dripping with blame. No more constant pressure to fix problems I didn't create. Silence is heavier than people think. At first, it pressed down on me like a stone. The first holiday season without them, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the undecorated tree I'd bought on impulse, wondering if maybe I'd made the wrong choice. On Christmas morning, instead of unwrapping presents with my family, I volunteered at a soup kitchen downtown. The laughter, the chatter, the way strangers pulled together, it wasn't the same as family, but it was something. It was honest. Therapy helped too. Dr. Martinez listened patiently as I unpacked years of guilt and obligation. One day, she leaned forward, her voice steady. "What your parents did," she said, "is called financial abuse. They conditioned you to believe your worth was measured by how much you could provide. That isn't love, Robin. That's exploitation." The word hit me like a revelation. Abuse. I'd always thought abuse was shouting, hitting, violence. I hadn't realized it could also be laughter while forging a daughter's signature, sweet voices that twist into threats, smiles that hide open hands waiting for money. "You weren't their daughter," Dr. Martinez said softly. "You were their ATM that occasionally came to family dinners." I cried the whole session, not just because she was right, but because a part of me already knew. And once I named it, once I allowed myself to call it abuse, everything shifted. The guilt eased. The shame thinned. I began to see my parents' demands for what they really were: crimes, not cries for help. Sometimes Aunt Sarah calls to give me updates. She never pushes me to reconcile. She just lays the facts out, gentle and matter-of-fact. Dad's probation ended, but he's still out of work. Turns out a criminal record doesn't pair well with a career in security. Mom took on extra shifts at the grocery store, but it barely covers expenses. Kayla's house, the one she refinanced under her name, has become a prison of its own. She had the baby, a little girl, my niece. A part of me aches every time Sarah mentions her, because I'll probably never meet her. But then Sarah mentions the screaming fights between Kayla and Brian, the way he threatens to move out because living with my parents is unbearable. Apparently, the golden child is learning that being the chosen one isn't so golden when the bills pile up and freedom disappears. It's ironic. They tried to steal my house to build a future. Instead, they trapped themselves in theirs. Meanwhile, I'm free. And yet, freedom isn't without its price. Sometimes I dream of Kayla's baby, faceless and nameless, reaching out tiny fingers I'll never hold. Sometimes I wake up aching for the father who once cheered for me at graduation, the mother who used to braid my hair before school. It hurts to admit that those people never really existed, or if they did, they vanished a long time ago. The hardest part is the what ifs. What if I'd just given in? What if I'd let them take the house? Would I still have a family? Would I be an aunt who buys baby clothes? A sister who visits on weekends? A daughter who still belongs somewhere? But then I remember their laughter as they told me they had my signature ready. I remember Dad screaming "selfish girl" into the phone. I remember Kayla accusing me of jealousy, as if my entire existence was measured against hers. And the what ifs dissolve, because deep down I know the truth. That family never existed, not in the way I needed. Sometimes, late at night, I picture the mountain house, the porch, the fire pit, the trail. I imagine Sheriff Collins sitting out there with his kids, safe and steady, building the kind of life I always wanted that house to hold. And I smile, because at least it's finally in the hands of someone who loves it for what it is, not for what it can buy. As for me, I've started dreaming again. Not of escape, but of building. Maybe another house someday, closer to work, with a little yard where I can grow vegetables, maybe even a dog. Things that are mine, not borrowed, not stolen, not guilted into existence. When people ask why I seem happier these days, I just say I simplified my life. I don't tell them the details. Most wouldn't believe it anyway. But here's the truth. The secret I've carried since the day I cut them off. I don't feel guilty. Not anymore. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let your family drown.